when we're out there doing on-the-job training and they're shadowing us, I'm not sure we're emphasizing the way to avoid that number one cause of injury.
This is the P&P Industry Insider Podcast.
Hello and welcome out to another episode of the P&P Industry Insider Podcast. We take a look at what is changing in the pest and lawn industries, and we take you to the front lines, to those that are driving those changes. I'm Donnie Shelton, owner of Triangle Home Services, which has Triangle Pest as well as Triangle Lawn. And with me, I have to have AI generate a new one because I can't say that you're the Mecca and the God of all numbers, all things pest control. But
you can.
Having said all of that, we will say it's Dan. How's that? Does that work? So Dan, yourself, our sponsors, peer groups, topic, and then our guest.
Hello, everybody. Dan Gordon, PCO bookkeepers and M&A specialists. We are here. If you're watching this on YouTube, you get to see Donnie in uniform. He just came off of his route, and
How many stops did you do? Yeah,
he's got his little pest control shirt on. He's very. That's a man of the people, right? He does all the jobs. Yes. So anyway, but before we dive in, let's talk about our sponsors for marketing within the pest and lawn industry. It's Coalmarch. And they do many things that will fuel the growth for pest and lawn pros. They're giving away the first month free. If you go to coalmarch.com/podcast, you can claim your free month. And well, I won't give away our guest, but for 40 years, more than 40 years, PestSure has been protecting pest control companies with the specialized insurance and safety programs because nobody understands our industry better. And you can learn more at pestsure.com. And finally, if you're into telephones and AI and whatnot, we have Voice for Pests. They deliver a phone solution designed for the pest and lawn care professionals that ties in with most industry CRMs. To discover more, go to voiceforpest.com/podcast. And if you're interested in one of our peer groups, which has been extremely popular, we just recorded one with David Billingsley. I'm not sure when this program drops, but watch out for that. He explains what he's observed in 2025 regarding our peer groups and the members thereof. And so today we are honored to welcome one of our sponsors, and that is PestSure. We have Todd Burke and Linda Midyett, Director of Safety for PestSure. Todd is the chief cook and bottle washer there. He does it all. And PestSure provides captive insurance coverage to pest control member companies nationwide. If you know anybody who's anybody in this industry, and for some of the best companies, they all use PestSure. And so we've talked to, look at the outline. We've talked to them several times, including episode 86, episode 138, episode 158, episode 201, and episode 229. So
hang on, and if you're wondering, Dan did that completely by memory.
Of course. I have a photographic memory. And anyway, by the way, welcome Todd and Linda. And what will we be talking about today? We're going to be talking about insurance and safety, and welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. It's good to be back.
You bet.
Great to have you guys. Before we get into the episode, one thing I will say, and this is for our sponsor, and they did not ask for this, I was just talking to, I had a guest come here to Triangle, and for some reason people think we know what we're doing. So sometimes I will host folks here, and we were talking about the topic of insurance came on, and he was talking about who you should go with. And I certainly gave a plug for PestSure, and I just talked about how important it is to make sure you have an insurer that understands the industry, because like most things, I feel like insurance is one of those things you got to pay attention to the details, which I really suck at. But I know, at least for me, if I'm using a company that is designed from our industry for our industry, it gives me a lot of peace of mind. So thank you guys for doing that. And certainly I will continue to, I always give the disclaimer when we do this podcast, we have you guys on. I am a client of PestSure, very happy. But things to think about is what I'll say. So with that, how you guys been?
We're good. We're good. Busy. We're busy, and things are well. Um, yeah, like I said, we're working with a lot of 1/1 renewal accounts, but it's good. We're just to kind of give everybody that has never heard of PestSure just a real quick snippet of what we cover. We're actually going into our, Dan said 40th year. We're going into our 46th year in 2026 as a program specific to the pest control industries. It's owned and operated by PMPs. Our board of directors are all PMPs, and this has been a remarkable industry resource for a long time. And without the support of the great industry we serve, we wouldn't be here today. So we're grateful and know it wouldn't happen without everybody's in the same boat. That's really our message. What we try to do is, stabilize the insurance world for you. No one likes talking about insurance, so please don't tune out right away here. We got some things to tell you, but we really try to stabilize and keep you out of the standard market and give you a predictable platform that allows you to grow your business and not worry about insurance. That's really it. We're insuring about $2 billion of revenue out there. We've got about 12,000 vehicles insured and about $600 million in payroll. So to kind of give you a snapshot of our world, it's about 70 pest control companies at the moment. But it's been
Geez, when you fired all that off, I thought you were just insuring Triangle and nobody else.
soon to be, right, Donnie?
Yeah, listen, I would
right around the corner.
Oh yeah, next year
But
for sure.
and we in order to qualify for our program, you've got to have $2 million in annual sales, and we will work with your broker. So if you like your current situation, all you have to do is we just need to connect, and we work on it together, and we have many successful relationships that way as well. So that's all I'll say. I'm gonna probably let Linda do all the value add here, but I wanted to at least kick it off that way so people know who we are.
Well, I have to say before we get into it, I'm really excited about the topic because this is one that we talk about a lot here at Triangle. By the way, the topic is safety training that actually works. And I have a quick story about this because, we do a lot more than just safety training. We do technical training. We do driver training, which is kind of safety training. I guess it is, but in any case, we were talking about our training program. And if there's one thing I've learned over the years is that you can do a ton of training. It doesn't necessarily means that it works, right? Anyone can sit and keep their eyes open for 40 minutes. So I should say anyone, most, not all, some can't even do that. But I mean, I say that because, we, on our side, we really try to validate that if we're going to spend the time that there's two things that happen. Either A, someone can reproduce what we train them, but the second one is, does it change behavior? And if the answer is no to either of those questions, then we know while we may have done training, we did not really do training. And so I'm excited about this episode, or at least the title, safety training that actually works, because I think it's a struggle, right? Sometimes we think if we do the computer-based training or we give the class or whatever, does that really mean that they're trained? And at least in my case, that has proven no. So
we discussed a lot of safety practices that affect claimed losses and your rates. But when pest control companies invest in safety and training, the opposite tends to happen, right? So let's kind of dig in. And our last guest was David Billingsley, who actually, we asked him what's the big aha for next year. And one of the things that he said is that people, meaning technicians, are becoming a lot more comfortable with cameras, dash cams, and all the, Big Brother watching. And that used to be kind of, your technicians are like, what, you don't trust me? And so let's talk about driver safety and distracted driving and, some of those dash cams and other tools that are used.
So I can talk a little bit on that. We audit.
We have 40 minutes to fill, so you got to talk a lot about it.
We audit our company every year, and at that time, at renewal time, actually, we get an update on what they're doing for their fleet from a telematics perspective. You know, cameras and GPS and how they're tracking driver behaviors and that sort of thing. So. More and more and more, we're seeing the PMP equip their entire fleet with in-cab and outward-facing cameras.
And are you seeing, is this starting to become a requirement of the insurance companies, or is it just good practice?
Not a requirement for us. I can speak, you know, on our program. Certainly, you know, you get burned a few times from a claims perspective, and you want cameras in the vehicles, you know.
Right.
We've got, you know, a few things going on in our program where we're trying to encourage our fleet managers and our company owners to really come down hard on avoiding distracted driving among their drivers. And, you know, there are ways to figure out if a driver was distracted when a crash occurred, but you'd really like to know if that behavior, like any safety thing, if that behavior was going on prior to the crash. So you don't have to wait for the crash to learn all about just what was going on in that vehicle, you know.
So if we define distracted, that's texting, being on the phone, eating, drinking.
Yeah, you know, the phones are the biggie because that distraction goes on for long periods of time in a vehicle. When you're eating and drinking, you know, that doesn't take a lot of brain power. It maybe removes one hand from the wheel, hopefully just one. But when you answer a phone call, you never know what that phone call is going to become, ever. If you make a phone call, you never know what that conversation is going to become. And so those distractions that really tax your brain can go on for a long time, which exposes you and your vehicle to just a lot more loss.
So even when you're using a hands-free device and you're talking on the phone, that's kind of considered distracted as well?
Absolutely.
Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not about what you're doing with your hands, you know, and the phone. It's about the brain and its inability to multitask. So, yeah.
So let's talk about that. You know, I'm sure that Triangle's the only company that struggles with this. And then, you know, the topic here is safety training that actually works. And I would assume when we define that actually works, the definition is that there's behavior change. Correct? I mean, is that a good definition that you guys want to go with, or is there something a different one?
Say that again for me a little louder, Donnie.
I was saying, you know, for me, if we're saying safety training that actually works, I think the definition of work would be that there's behavior change, right? There's a change as a result of the training. So walk me through, or like, what have you seen that has been effective in changing behavior, right? You know, because we talk about safety, everyone understands safety, and I say everyone understands. Most people understand safety. They understand the importance, but it's not always followed with behavior. And so how is, you know, I guess the question is how do you come up with training where it does in the end result in behavioral change? And what have you guys seen that works?
And we're not just speaking about fleet safety now. We're speaking about safety training in general, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So one of the areas, and I'll just stick to our industry and how it works, our industry meaning pest, not insurance, is, you know, we spend that time in the field, OJT, with a new employee. And one thing is we never really say to a new employee in our industry, we run a safe ship. We hope that you'll go home uninjured every day. But if you happen to get injured on our job, the very most likely way that's going to happen is you're going to slip, trip, or fall while walking around a location doing service. We don't tell them, don't touch the stove, it's hot. We don't ever really say in new hire training, when you get hurt, it's going to be because you fell down over something on a location, right? So I think that's real important to do. Tell them, we're a safe industry. We don't have a lot of big gotchas here, but we have injuries, and this is how they happen, and this is how you avoid them. And then the other place I think we miss pretty continuously is when we're out there training on the job. You were with a tech this morning. When we're out there doing on the job training, and they're shadowing us, I'm not sure we're emphasizing the way to avoid that number one cause of injury, which is, take those few minutes when you arrive, especially at a residential location. Things change all the time, right? Take those few minutes when you first arrive to just take a look around instead of jumping out of the truck, pulling out the backpack sprayer, getting all suited up, grabbing the hose, whatever they're doing there. Take those few minutes to just take a quick loop around and see what's going on before you start your service.
Yeah.
I don't think that's ever done.
Right. So it sounds like maybe a safety culture is a big part, like, because you talked about that in training. I've seen that happen. I mean, even outside of our industry, I'm involved in aviation too, and I've been with instructors who are there. That's a real big item with them, and I've been with instructors like, and over time you can see what kind of pilots they produce. And I would say the same thing for probably even pest control, right? If they're like today, I was out, I was doing ride-alongs today. If I'm like, don't worry about the PPE, don't stop and take the look around. Don't worry about where you're stepping or pinning. I mean, like those are, but I think highlighting those common areas is a really good, like just that awareness. Like, yeah, I probably need to watch where because most people don't think, well, I'm going to trip and fall. It sounds ridiculous, right? But it happens.
It happens.
It happens. Especially like for example, this morning, we went on a 2-hour delay in North Carolina last night. There was so if it snows here, it's Armageddon. I mean, everyone should know that, right? It's the South, snow comes, and then the world stops, and schools close down, bread and milk's gone, yada, yada, yada. So, but we delayed, the roads were okay, but I'm more about there's still a little bit of a layer of ice in the lawns.
Everywhere, yeah.
Yeah, so if they're going to go out and they're going to treat, what does that mean? Right. And so that was one of the reasons that we delayed, was to kind of get that, kind of get some of that going, because for that very reason, right? Not only just the road, but also what would be, the terrain when they're going around treating. So bringing it back, making it effective. It sounds like culture is a big deal and a big thing, highlighting where the potentials are. Anything else you can think of that would be a way to make it so that, the training, does work, and it makes it so that people are more aware, they're more safety conscious. And by the way, if it's not, that's fine. I'm just curious, is there anything else that we should be talking about?
I think that the demonstration thing is just very, very important. A lot of training happens in a classroom, talking, watching PowerPoints, watching videos, doing online training, all good information. But I think that especially the safety training part of things, demonstration is just really, really important. Walking them through it, the whys and the hows. It's all about habit, right? Because in this industry, when they're a residential tech and they're stopping at house after house, you can easily fall into sort of just that routine. Put your head down, get it done, get your stop recorded, reported, and on you go to the next one.
So we talked about slip, trip, and fall and some driver safety. One of the items on the list is ladder usage. And somebody told me something interesting. the obvious is you climb a ladder and you fall off because you're not using it properly. But somebody told me that a lot of people pull their backs out by
Oh,
carrying ladders.
handling them,
Yeah,
ladder
so
handling.
what's the training on that besides, preventing people from falling? You want to prevent people from back injuries and things like that. So,
Yeah, so let's focus on those two areas. First of all, ladders have gone by the wayside as far as a high cause of injury frequency wise in this industry. In fact, I look back at this year, I've got like 8 claims from ladder falls, none of them very, pretty much ladders slipping out, a setup situation, kicking out when they're
Mm-hmm.
when
what
they're
what do you attribute that drop to?
um less usage of ladders, um for sure. And
Depots,
then I think,
drones,
yeah, I think they're doing a better job of training too. I do.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they focus more on it. So the other part of that though, Dan, that you were talking about are more like musculoskeletal injuries from handling a ladder. Because if you're using big extension ladders, that can be a lot of weight and it can be awkward, positioning and all of those sorts of things. I also don't see a lot of musculoskeletal injuries anymore in pest control. And when we do see them, they're primarily resulting from a slip, trip, or fall, or crawl space and attic work. So awkward positioning in places,
Mm-hmm.
more so than ladder handling or poor technique, that sort of thing.
Right.
One thing I'll just say about ladders is think about the claims we've had with ladders, and when a devastating claim related to a ladder and electrocution many years ago, and you know don't use aluminum ladders. I mean,
Mm.
don't make sure you got fiberglass ladders. It was a death claim. A guy was on the aluminum ladder, and it didn't end well. So I know from that a lot of lessons were learned, but hopefully, every time I see a pest control truck driving around anywhere, I look straight at the ladders and go, oh, they got it together. They're using fiberglass at least.
That's that's a really good tidbit.
And they are heavier than aluminum, so
Mhm.
you're trading off, but
Listen, I will take a pulled muscle over a grave any day of the week. I'm gonna for myself, right?
right.
I mean,
Yeah.
speak for yourself, but no, I don't. Death by electrocution doesn't sound like something I want to sign up for
yeah,
No.
sure.
yeah.
I want to kind
Happens
of
quick though, right? So
well, I want to come back around. One of the things I want to
Dan,
talk about is, we talked about this. I think it was the last episode we talked about this. Um, and you guys implemented a policy at PestSure about where distracted driving, right? And I know that we said that we were going to circle back, and we're talking. I mean, the topic is obviously safety training that actually works. And I remember, it was cell phone usage, and so I'm curious to hear if you guys have any data, like any early results of what you've seen as since you guys have implemented that program. Maybe the first thing to do would be to talk about it, because some folks that are listening to this episode may not have no idea what I'm talking about. But maybe talk a little bit about what you did, talk a little bit about kind of what you've seen so far, maybe some early data of like what's happening with that.
Sure. What you're referring to is what we call our cell-free zone initiative. And we started 2 initiatives at the same time. One was our cell-free zone, and one was concerning novice drivers. And we classify a novice driver as someone with less than 5 years of driving experience. So we did those 2 things simultaneously. The cell-free zone definitely got a lot more attention
Mhm.
by our insureds than the other. And by attention, I don't mean that they aren't doing both of them. I mean, the cell-free was a little bit harder to get over that hurdle. So we started it in April of 2024. But what you have to know is that we said on your renewal after April of 2024 is when your sell-free initiative, maybe pricing would take place, your renewal after. So, people renew at different times in our program. But what I can say about results is we've seen good results from it. A year in, so April 24 to April 25, we were seeing a 14% reduction in crashes in our program, in frequency.
Wow.
Which is really exciting because everyone is in the initial stages of this. Writing a policy it's not like flicking the light switch, right? So there's a big stair step build up to getting compliant with sell-free. And some companies are better at it than others, of course. But by and large, our folks who adopted sell-free zone are happy with it. They've had to make some tough decisions when their drivers just don't quite get it. We've had some crashes occur still as a result of distracted driving. They still happen because we're dealing with the human condition, right? So people are still in their habits. They're still going to make mistakes. They're still going to think, oh, just this one time, all of those things. But as it goes, we've been seeing some results we're really satisfied with.
Awesome. No, that's really good news.
Any stats on what percentage of the auto accidents are from cell phones or distracted driving? Or I know I'm going off script a little bit, but I'm just curious.
Probably, Dan, but I mean, there's stats there's national stats, and then there's our program stats.
Right.
And the thing about our program stats is often we as the insurer aren't necessarily going to know. So I could quote stats on, a lot of rear end collisions are likely the result of a distracted situation, because why else do you run into some great big thing right in front of you, But those are all just kind of assumption things. We do measure, have our rear end collisions reduced, have our failure to yield right-of-ways reduced. Yes and yes,
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. So I want to bring this back around. We were talking about, let's just say I'm listening to this podcast and I know safety is important. I know it's a component of my company that I need to implement. I don't necessarily know how to do it. Can you just talk through maybe, people talk about a safety plan, they talk about a safety training program. Can you talk through what would be just kind of the common components that you need to have for a safety program for your company that you feel like, statistically speaking, while it may not cover every, it's like the 80-20 rule. Like if you do these things, it's going to cover you 80% of, it's going to help you get 80% there. Any thoughts of what can you do and what should you be doing and what should it look like?
Overall safety program for a company you're referring
Yes.
to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's a biggie. I would say that your new hire training is paramount. I mean, focus there and make sure that new hires understand the hazards of the job and how to keep themselves safe on the job. Driving, I don't think you can spend enough time on, and especially as our workforce changes to people who have never known driving life without a cell phone, I think you can't spend enough time on the distraction that is for your drivers. And writing policy is just one small part of that. So revamping all of your communication practices within the company so that nobody has to be answering a phone or making a phone call when they're driving. That's it,
Yeah.
You have to cover certain regulatory topics, of course. You mentioned ladders and, you're dealing with chemicals. So chemical exposures, PPE, lockout, tag out, there's that list of regulatory topics that have to be covered. The funny thing about those is they aren't the hazards in our industry. They don't represent the hazards of our industry. So then you have to add on to that, dog bites. Dog bites are number 3 for a work injury in pest control.
Really?
Number 3 in our program, dog bites.
Yeah. Yep.
You got bit, or you were a bit, or you bit somebody?
Oh, now listen, not today, but I've had a lot of close calls, and I may have had some really close incidents or situations with canines in the past. We'll just say that. So never got bit, but I absolutely have had folks get bit. It is.
We've had some in the program. We've had some horrible dog bite situations. Just make your toes curl situations.
Yeah. Really? Luckily, I haven't had one of those, but we certainly have had. It's. I don't want to say it's not unheard of. We'll say that. Yeah. Not unheard of.
But yeah, in 2025, still the third highest cause of injury in our program for work injury was dog bites. So just behind vehicle crashes, injuries from vehicle crashes, and then slips, trips, and falls. So.
And where does chemical exposure, where it's not even on the list?
No.
Yeah.
No. And when they are, when we do get an exposure, like somebody says, their backpack sprayer was leaking and it got on them, it's minimal. It's minor. Right. They get a little panicked and,
Right.
Yeah. Because we don't have the big nasty chemicals anymore that.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, those are the top 3. Right behind that are the musculoskeletal: lift, push, pull, reach, bend, those kinds of things. So, again, those are what we said earlier. Those are good demonstration type safety topics for people, for technicians in the field. When you're in a crawl, when you're in an attic, when you're hoisting that full backpack sprayer onto your back, maybe don't fill it all the way, or certainly, don and doff it the correct way. Those sorts of things.
I love your, I really did. I loved your idea of like, just training folks. Hey, take a look around and see exactly what you got before you just kind of get going, because I think that's listen, my kids are driving on a ridiculous amount of money per month insurance policy because I have teenagers. But anyway, I'm always telling them, like, look, when the light turns red or turns green, look both ways before you hit that gas. And I'm like, anytime you go through an intersection, cover that brake. It's just, I guess my point is, it's like the idea of just being aware, right? Having not just, the light's green, I'm going to go. And, the more awareness I think you can have, the better. But we're getting close to the end here. So there's one thing, and I'm going to let you run there, Dan. One thing I would say, at least for me, and by the way, I didn't come up with this doctrine, but what I have seen at Triangle is, and it's just like anything else that you would do, that when we talk about training that works, is that you get what you tolerate, right? And so when it comes to safety, I think as a leadership team, as an owner or as a manager, it's like, are you serious or not? And are you willing to replace someone who refuses to be safe? And if you're listening to this, especially in the area of driving, years ago, I would let someone go that we get a phone call on, or they get a speeding ticket or whatever. Now, I am not that way at all. I am super and everyone knows this, and it's not just me. Like I've put it into the company, is that you have something questionable in the driving thing, you can't work here. Like, it's really that simple, And what's kind of funny is that actually translates over into aviation. For example, if you go get a job somewhere and they actually pull your driving record, if you have a poor driving record, guess what? You're not flying there, right? It's a really weird, not weird, but there's an association. There's actually a stat, and not that people know this, but in aviation, bad drivers are bad pilots. It's like, they crash airplanes, seriously. And so my point here is that, bringing it back around of, creating training that works, I would say a corollary to that would be, you get what you tolerate. And if you allow I'm not going to say slips because that's absolutely the wrong word in use context. But if you allow things to get by and you don't hold the line, well, where is it? Is it at the accident or is it, before? Because I think the more you hold that before, the more you're going to get that culture. So Dan, you were going to say something. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I just I know that there are discounts available for safety training programs and whatnot. How do those work? Do they work with your program? And how do you prove that you have one in place if, how
if
does
that's
that?
an option. Yeah.
You want to speak to that? Discounting,
As far as having a safety program.
yeah, or any component of, like, say, telematics, and we don't
Yeah.
count premium because,
We don't, I mean, we don't, when we do our underwriting process, whether it's an existing or new opportunity for us, we look at everything, we consider, and that's one of the things, if someone was interested in our program, one of the steps is to have Linda do about a, 30-minute interview with them about their safety culture and, their approach there. And we're not there to do anything but offer a helping hand on where their losses are, like, well, before the call, like issues with ladder safety or issue with the driving or whatever, kind of hone in on those areas and see where we can help, and that whether they've got dedicated staff to that or whatever, those all help us say, yeah, this would be a good fit for the program. But there's not a box we check that says, oh, their general liability rate is going to be lower because
But it's baked into the premium because of the underwriting.
It's really not. And then the question I get a lot is, hey, Todd, we just spent hundreds of $1,000s on these cameras. I mean, what is that going to do to our auto rate? Well, it's all about the loss ratios. I mean, and incidents.
Yeah.
And that
Right.
really that drives the auto rate.
You're not going to fix it with cameras.
Well, the problem with that, Donnie and Dan, is that, there's been so many failed attempts at telematics that I'm going into my 16th year running the program, and I've seen people make these investments and then no one's watching the shop, and everybody expects right when we put these cameras in that magic is going to happen overnight. I mean, we're not going to see any incidents and all that. That is just not the case. That has to be managed. I know it's expensive. I know it's money and it's time, but those drivers that get coached, and
Right.
we have an insured that I just got a report from that was quite impressive. I mean, he's got everybody on there ranked at the end of the year. He gives bonus out based on the driver's score, and you got to be eligible on your driver's score to even be in line with it. And it's not a small bonus.
Right.
So there's ways that companies are really making an impact, but we are just not in a position where we just have to look at the loss ratio as the full service insurance company servicing the industry. We definitely take it into consideration. We'd rather them have it than not have it, but they're not getting, oh, we're going to 10% or 15% higher rate because you don't have cameras. We haven't gone that route.
Gotcha. Well, listen, really appreciate having you guys here on the podcast. I mean, again, like you said, not everyone loves talking about insurance and safety, but certainly what I would consider a high risk item for our industry and for your company. I've often said, the highest risk we have is our insurance policy because it has the lowest payout and it has the highest risk. And so, there's things to think about there, but no, I appreciate you guys coming onto the show and sharing some of your knowledge. And then, of course, Dan, anything to add before we finish out here?
Nope. I thought that was really comprehensive. And
yeah.
I've got one thing, guys, that I wanted to be sure to say, because I think we miss it. Again, we miss it. Is a post-incident conversation with the person that was involved. So it's easy to take in enough information to get a claim reported, whether it be auto or work injury. But that post-incident conversation with them where you just sit down and try and figure out what went wrong, and that's all you're doing. You're not placing blame on anyone. You're just trying to figure out how this doesn't happen to someone tomorrow or next week or next month. And that's something that goes by the wayside because we're all so busy. So,
We call them postmortems here, and
Yeah.
it applies to more than just safety. It applies to, even when we make a bad mistake or, we do something with a customer, we call them postmortems. But yeah, that's a great point. Great point, Linda. So Linda, Todd, appreciate you guys coming on the podcast. Always grateful to hear what's happening on your side and what's going on. Just a reminder, any topics and resources that we talked about today are going to be available on the podcast website. We also got a link to PestSure. I'm sure if you want to reach out to Todd and learn more about their program, if you're not already using it. And Linda, if you are on the program and you've got questions about safety, of course, I'm sure she would love to help you. And with that, we're going to sign off. We ask that if you like this episode or any episodes, please leave us a review. We're no different than you in that. Reviews drive our business. And we also love it when you send complaints and concerns to Dan, because that's his specialty, and he really likes it when people complain to him. Right. And with that, we're signing off. We'll see you all next time. Take care.
Happy holidays.
See ya.
Thank you all.
Bye.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.